Salam and welcome back to Somali Dispatch, somalidispatch.com, and welcome to our weekly segment, Dispatches, where we discuss some of the biggest Somali-related news items of the week. My name is Abdikadir Guled. This week's biggest news items include Abiy Ahmed's re-election as Ethiopia's prime minister and the effects it could have on Somali politics, the expected ICJ ruling of the Somali Kenyan maritime dispute expected this week, and Farah Moalim's comments on Ikraan Tahlil's case. To discuss these issues, we are joined by Zainab Hassan. Zainab is a poet, a writer, and a human rights and a gender equity activist. She is the founder and the executive director of Somali Gender Equity Movement, and also Abdirizak Dhicis, an international relations expert and an East African political analyst. Welcome both, Zainab Hassan and Abdirizak Dhicis, to Somali Dispatches. Let me start with Zainab. If you can give us your perspective on what your colleagues and maybe perhaps your friends are saying, what it means for Somalis in the re-election of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm so glad to be with you. And thanks to Somali Dispatch for this interview. If I jump into the question, I think we all know that Abiy Ahmed's election or re-election is actually contested according to the international election monitors. I mean, the election was not actually fair and free election, and obviously some of the regions has not participated. But in any case, obviously it does have an impact in Somalia, depending on who Somalia's next president would be and whether that president would be part of the trio of, Abiy now and Farmajo, and we know Afawere of Eritrea has developed, relationships and alliances. But in looking at the Somali context, it could be completely different. Because for one, Somalia, in the history of Somalia, there was never any re-election of any president started from the 1960 when Somalia got its independence. And also if the current election of the Senate so far do have some indications, there is a possibility that Mohamed Farmajo, the current president, incumbent, may not be the next president. So it will all depend on who Somalia's next president would be and whether that president would actually be part of the trio engagement. So I'll leave with that and have Abdirizak add to his 2 cents. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Abdirizak Dhicis, as you have heard Zainab's immediate reaction to the news of the re-election of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia. What are people saying in your circles, and what do you foresee, what kind of effect it would have on Somali politics?
Thank you, Abdikadir, and I want also to greet my colleague here on the interview, Ms. Zainab, and I want also greet the audience wherever they are in the world. First of all, I want to start with the re-election of Abiy Ahmed. Beside the election being disputed, and we were not expecting free and fair election to take place in Ethiopia, since we know the history of the country being monarchy and an empire and being dictatorship since the TPLF took power in the beginning of the 1990s. We were not expecting such a thing to happen, and the international community are disputing that. And his re-election, it has a huge ramification on the Horn of Africa. As we know, geopolitically, Abiy Ahmed came with a new vision in the Horn of Africa, where he tried to build relationship with Eritrea, ending a 2 decades old conflict with the neighboring country, and also engage with Somalia and try to create what's called interconnectedness and interdependence between the 3 Horn of Africa countries, and also include Djibouti in the future. So that has changed the geopolitics of the entire region, And his re-election means that if Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo is not re-elected again, then he has to start over again on that agenda and on that mission. And since we know the historical conflict between the two countries and the mistrust that's based between the two countries, we don't know how long this relationship will sustain. And as Ms. Zainab mentioned right now, the re-election of any president of Somalia is a hard task, and it's very difficult to achieve that.
I understand. If I may follow up quickly, something that both of you touched on, which is the re-election of President Farmajo or the election of the presidency in Somalia, Abdirizak. We know there's a bit of a dispute on the timelines, at least for now. The re-election of Abiy, what consequence would that have now? Would that give him an opportunity to flex a muscle into Somalia's elections and perhaps put his thumb on the scale?
I think Abiy Ahmed right now is dealing with domestic issues, especially mainly coming from Tigray region and also from Oromia as well. So he needs to sort out and settle those disputes locally first and have a political agreement with the Tigray, because it has been evident now it's very difficult to defeat or to subdue the muscles or the power of the TPLF, former TPLF, now called TDF. It's very difficult to do that. So unless there's a political settlement to that, it's very difficult for him to stretch his muscles and to influence on the election of Somalia.
Zainab, for you, with the re-election of Abiy Ahmed to Ethiopia's prime minister position and the interest Ethiopia and Abiy have on Somalia and his keenness of President Farmajo, we also know that there isn't rhetoric coming from the other oppositions there. The heightened previous conflict between Somalia and Ethiopia is minimized. Is there a need for the Ethiopian intervention into Somali elections in this time around?
Yeah, I do agree with Abdirizak. Obviously, Ethiopia does have its own issues and problems right now. There is a conflict, ongoing conflict that hasn't been resolved. There are a lot of oppositions. There are a lot of regions that are not actually have not participated and are not supporters of Abiy. So I think he does have a lot of problems into his own hands that needs to solve or resolve internally. In the event, probably he might try to support Farmajo, since they have been, really had close relationships and a vision together. However, I think that I don't think he's going to risk that, depending on looking into the future. He wants to restart whoever becomes a president to start, to sell his opinion and vision for the future of the Horn of Africa. So I think probably he will have a minimum influence in Somali politics, but I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to try to support Farmajo's comeback.
Right, and if I may stay with you, Zainab Hassan, the expected ICJ maritime dispute ruling that's to come on next week on Tuesday. What does that mean for the relationship between Kenya and Somalia? I know Kenya is already causing fuss over the decision, declining their participation in it, and acknowledging it even is not what they're considering and contemplating. There's heightened tension on that side of the border, especially on the sea coast. What do you think this means for the region?
I honestly believe, obviously, the decision will have an impact in the region, and especially in the two countries that are involved. In any cases that go to court, there's always winners and losers, unless obviously the case is dismissed, which is not the case for this maritime dispute case. However, we all know that Kenya has tried to withdraw mainly from the case. However, the court is going to have its own decision, and it all depends on how the two parties accept the verdict of the court. No one is above, above the law. And I honestly believe in the context of the African Union and the UN Charter, they really have to, both countries, whatever the decision is, whoever wins and whoever loses, to accept that and try to work on together, because the two countries will always be neighbors. Nobody is moving anywhere, and they're going to have to live together as neighbors. So I honestly think probably, from what we have seen so far, if it doesn't go on the side of Kenya, Kenya might try to not accept the verdict of the court, the decision of the court. However, this is not the first case. I think if we look at Cameroon and Nigeria, Nigeria refused to accept, mainly the decision of the court. However, the late Kofi Annan, who was mainly the Security Council chair, has intervened, and the case was obviously ended into an agreement. So I think it will all depend on the reaction of the two countries, and obviously the UN and the international community, how they try to intervene and deal with it and mediate the two countries. So I'll leave with that. Thank you.
Abdirizak, is your perspective on an expectation of the decision that is about to come from ICJ, demarcation of the sea borders between Somalia and Kenya. Kenya's reaction, what are your circles saying? What are you hearing? Is there anything that troubles you that we might need to highlight here?
In this case, I think it depends to whom you talk to, but the highly anticipated court verdict in next week is that the court will rule in favor of Somalia, and Kenya has already started to show, suspicion in the process of the court, and because they are not going to accept. But one thing we need to realize is that, as Zainab mentioned right now, is the dispute between Cameroon and Nigeria was solved eventually in agreement between the two countries. And given the nature of the court, if they give in favor of Somalia and Kenya doesn't accept, or in favor of Kenya, because we don't know what the verdict will be, and Kenya and Somalia doesn't accept, given the political situation right now in both countries, because Kenya is going into an election next year, and Somalia this year or early next year for the presidency. So none of the countries is going to accept the verdict. So what's going eventually to be is a settlement agreement between the two countries, because the court doesn't have an enforcement power, to force countries to accept their verdict. All they have to do is just to release what their best judgment is and issue the verdict and then leave it there. So it's up to the countries to accept or to cooperate and reach a consensus in the future.
Right, and Abdirizak, if I may stay with you on our final point here, discussion point here, Farah Moalim's comments on Ikraan Tahlil's missing and case has been circulating, and Somali media houses were having field day with his comments regarding the missing spy agent. Your reaction? What are your circles saying? Having seen that, what's your reaction and takeaway from that interview?
Yeah, I listened to Farah Moalim comments on the death of Ikraan Tahlil, and his justification is unacceptable and it's appalling to someone who reached to be a responsible person to that level until he became the deputy speaker of the Kenya Parliament. And he's saying, oh, many people has been killed, so what's so special about her? So seeking justice for a Somali citizen who work for the country and put their life at the front line to risk is very paramount, because without justice, then we have no country and we have no people, and chaos preserves all over the place. So I really condemn Farah Moalim comments on Ikraan Tahlil's death and accusing the Prime Minister of being a substitute or a follower for the Kenyan government or foreign nations, and doing the same thing, for him, I don't know, protecting the current president Nobody accused the current president of killing Ikraan Tahlil. All the prime minister is seeking is just justice for the deceased person in order to convince the family of Ikraan Tahlil. So I completely condemn and it's unacceptable the way he commented on that issue.
Zainab Hassan, on that final discussion point on Farah Moalim's comments on Ikraan Tahlil's case and his assessment of Prime Minister Robles' credibility. What was your takeaway on listening to that interview and seeing the reaction on Somalis based on what he said?
To be frankly honest with you, I don't think it's even worth it to even discuss because it was awful. It's terrible. He spoke like a tabloid. He didn't speak as a, elderly man, somebody who is a politician, decent politician. He didn't speak like a father. He didn't speak even like as a human being when he was talking about Ikraan Tahlil. And the irony is, I came across a tweet that he made in September. I don't know if you are aware of the Dr. Abdul who was missing for probably 3 weeks or so.
Right.
And he wrote, quote, "It's 9 days since Dr. Abdul was picked by security officers from Nairobi CBE. President Uhuru, you are a father, a husband, and a son of an elderly parent. Dr. Abdulhab's sick elderly father, wives, and children are crying for him. His Excellency, the buck stabs with you. Please order his release." I see a controversy here. Someone who actually is advocating for someone that was arrested by Kenyan police, saying that the parents and the family are crying, but he didn't even take into consideration or shown has any sympathy for Ikraan Tahlil's parents and her family, which is very, very sad, to be frankly honest with you. And the way he even, he was like, as if nothing happened. I mean, he didn't even show any sympathy as a human being for a young lady who is missing. I mean, he has a daughter. He's a father of a daughter. What if, Ikraan was his daughter? Would he say the same thing? I don't think so, unless obviously he believes that the lives of young women are nothing. And I feel sorry for his daughters in that context, if that's what he believes. But I think, it's very unfortunate. It's very sad. And even, the way he spoke about the prime minister, and it was very degrading. And even if he had a phone call with him, I mean, that to me is confidential. And he shouldn't be, speaking like that. I mean, obviously, if we make a comparison between, the current president Farmajo, when he was picked as a prime minister, he was sitting in a cubicle in Buffalo, New York, and he was just an employee of Buffalo. So what is he saying here? I mean, and he said the life of, are we going to destroy, sort of like the statehood for the sake of a girl? That to me is really, really insulting and inhumane. And that's all what I can say. Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for joining me on this discussion, and your perspectives are would help in understanding what's going on in Horn of Africa. And I hope that you will join us in the future as we discuss these issues and others that relate to Somalis. I can't thank you enough, and have a very good night to the both of you, both Zainab and Abdirizak.
Thank you.